Welcome back to another FPL video. This will be the best wildcard team for Game Week 11. It is recorded on the Monday morning, so bear that in mind. And I'm only going to show one team today. If you want to see multiple drafts, check out my previous wildcard videos where I talk about all the key assets that you need to have into account. And I'm going to build this 50-man squad from the ground up. I've got around 102.5 million in terms of squad value, so maybe some of you might not be able to afford this, and I'll try to talk about some possible downgrades you can make along the way in order to be able to afford this wildcard team. If you're not enjoying this video, smash the like button and subscribe if you're new. Let's try to get this video to the 200 likes, and we're getting ever closer towards 22,000 subscribers and beyond. Without further ado, let's jump straight into this video. I've gone for a new goalkeeper here in David Raya, who's averaging 5 points per game, a very impressive start to his Arsenal career in terms of the clean sheets. He has had a few shaky performances in the last couple of weeks against Lens, Tottenham, Man City and Chelsea, but maybe back to his form against Sheffield United. He had a good performance against Everton, although in both games he wasn't really under pressure, but some very good distribution. He was making some really good claims in the box, and generally speaking, he can offer Arsenal some composure. Once he fully settles in, he could become a top goalkeeper for Arsenal, but there are still some question marks about him and the whole Aaron Ramsdale situation. I think Raya is the clear number one from now on, and Ramsdale will only play in the cup competitions such as the FA Cup and the Carabao Cup, but David Raya should play in the Champions League and Premier League, and he's only 4.8 million. When you've got Gabriel being benched against Sheffield United, and I do sympathise with those of you that went for him, if you want to cover Arsenal defensively, David Raya might be the very best way of doing so. He's priced at the exact same as Gabriel. You can have Saliba at 0.4 million more, and he's got the bonus points potential for sure, but David Raya is probably the most cost-effective option who will start every single game for Arsenal in the Premier League. So I have gone for the Spaniard, and the second goalkeeper will be Areola. Despite blanking in Game Week 10 against Everton, we were all hoping for a clean sheet there. He was able to get a save point at least, and he got 3 points overall, but it's still very disappointing by his standards, and he's only kept one clean sheet so far this season. But with the fixtures coming up, I'd still recommend Areola as your backup goalkeeper. But in terms of having Areola and Turner, I'm not too sure about that in the long term and having many clean sheets in the process. So if you want to go for a goalkeeper from a top team who can keep plenty of clean sheets and be right up there in terms of points scored amongst goalkeepers, then I would go for David Raya, whilst Areola will be your backup. Matty Cash owners, and that includes myself, were very fortunate to say the least in Game Week 10. He came off just 4 minutes before Emi Martinez scored an own goal to wipe out that Aston Villa clean sheet, and despite Cash getting a yellow card, he was able to bank a 5-pointer in that match despite Aston Villa ultimately conceding, of course. And Matty Cash has that attacking potential, which we haven't really seen in terms of goal output since that brace against Burnley. I am hoping for one of those big returns before I eventually sell him around Game Week 13 or 15, but for a short-term punt over the next 4 to 5 weeks, I think Matty Cash is one of the best defenders to have, but his time is possibly coming to an end when you look at the fixtures coming up for Aston Villa from Game Week 15 onwards. It's Tottenham away in Game Week 13 too, but then he's got Bournemouth straight afterwards in Game Week 14, so you could make a case for keeping him up until Game Week 15, and that's when you can start to sell these Aston Villa assets, including Matty Cash. Then we go on to the other defenders, and we have to stay within budget, and that's obviously a key reason why I'm going to make a few changes here. So I am going to go for a Crystal Palace defender, and whilst Joachim Andersen would be the preference, I'm going to go for a cheaper, more cost-effective option in Mark Gay, a very underrated centre-back. It's probably only a matter of time before he makes a move to a so-called top club, but I have to say Crystal Palace have one of the best centre-back partnerships in the Premier League with Joachim Andersen and Mark Gay, and they're probably the two best players they have alongside Eze and Analyse. But I do like Gay at 4.5 million. I think he's a decent option, and he's got some fantastic fixtures coming up. In terms of the next 5, Crystal Palace are right up there in the fixture difficulty rating. So I would go for Mark Gay, but if you do have the funds and you maybe want to spend an extra 0.5 million, then Joachim Andersen isn't bad either. I bought him when he was around 4.7 million, so I'm going to keep him for now, and I'm very happy to do so. So Mark Gay does enter the team, but Joachim Andersen might have more FPL points in general. Next up will be Tsimikas, who has got back-to-back returns, and he faces Luton away next, and then afterwards it's Brentford and Man City, but then it's followed by a few other good fixtures, and Robertson could be out until December or January. We don't have a definitive timeline yet, but it should be a couple of months, and Tsimikas should start the vast majority of Premier League games. So I'm very happy with this purchase, and he's a very good differential. His ownership will go up, of course. It's only around 6% at the time of this recording, and hopefully he stays a differential for a long time, but I just don't see that being the case as more and more people flock towards Liverpool assets. The fourth defender will be Burn. I know Newcastle's fixtures aren't great over the next 3 or 4, and it is Arsenal at home next, but Dan Burn has very good long-term fixtures, and Newcastle boasts one of the best defences in the Premier League. My fifth defender is going to be a controversial one because he did get benched in Game Week 10 when a lot of people brought him in, and I do sympathise with those of you who did so, and you might not want this defensive double up, but I would consider Gabriel still, and as I said in my reaction stream, I would not be surprised if Gabriel started in Game Week 12 against Burnley and it's Saliba who then gets the rest, because if you look at the last couple of weeks, Ben White was rested in the Champions League against Lens, then you had Gabriel against Sheffield United in the last Premier League game, and Saliba's the only defender for Arsenal who hasn't been rested yet. You've had Zinchenko and Tomiyasu rotating, and now I firmly believe it could be Saliba who gets that rest in Game Week 12. I could be wrong about that, of course, and also Saliba hasn't played for the national team in recent months, whilst Gabriel has been starting for Brazil in the last 4 games, really. So that's also played a part, I think, in Gabriel being benched in Game Week 10. It was an opportunity for Kivior to come in and also to prove himself, to get some minutes under him as well, ahead of that Carabao Cup clash with West Ham United. Let me know what you think of this. If you just want to go for a cheap defender around 4 to 4.4 million, you could consider Harry Maguire at 4.2 million, with the next 3 fixtures being quite good for Manchester United, but I don't trust the Red Devils defensively, and I would consider Gabriel and potentially an Arsenal defensive double up. We are going for the triple up here with Bukayo Saka. He's by far the best Arsenal asset, period. There's no doubt about it. You do have Martinelli and Odegaard. I think they're also very good on their day. Martinelli had a great game, perhaps much better than Saka against Sheffield United, but he got no goal contributions, and Saka's assist was rather fortunate. It was an FPL assist by pure definition. And in terms of the Arsenal defenders and this defensive double up, Arsenal have kept the most clean sheets so far this season, and I can understand why some of you might be apprehensive about going for that. So you don't have to go for Gabriel and David Raya, but it's something quite different which I think could work out in the long term. Of course, when they do face Newcastle away, you could bench both David Raya and Gabriel, and you don't really need to start either of them in that fixture. But Bukayo Saka is someone you want to start in every single game, no matter who they face, whether it's Man City, Liverpool, Newcastle, or a Burnley, which is coming up very soon actually in Game Week 12, and he is a great captaincy option in such a week. But we have to look at the other midfielders as well, and this is where things will start to get controversial. Maybe not just yet, because this is a player we're all going to agree on. Mohamed Salah for me has to be in the team, and that's something we can all agree on, but it's also a bit detrimental towards your budget if you've got Salah and Erling Haaland at the same time, and then you look at the back and you've got no Trent Alexander-Arnold or no Kieran Trippier, and some of you may be very interested in those assets. And look, if I had the funds available, I'd definitely go for Trippier, but it's all about prioritizing, and you can't fit absolutely every top quality option in there, so you have to bear that in mind, and that's why I'm going to go for James Maddison, and there is no Heung-min Son in this wildcard team. Does that mean I think Son will blank and be a poor asset when the fixtures turn for Spurs? No, I still think he's going to do well, but Maddison offers better value for money, especially if you bought him as early as I did, and I think Maddison will probably keep up with Heung-min Son over the next couple of weeks, and Maddison hasn't blanked still in away fixtures. He forced that own goal from Ward against Crystal Palace, and that was integral to giving Tottenham the win, and he's just very consistent in away matches. He got his first return against Fulham at home, so he's finally off the mark in home matches there for Tottenham Hotspur, and James Maddison has been one of the signings of the summer, not just in the Premier League, but also across all the top 5 leagues. Next up is a player that I'm seeing a lot of overreaction for. He blanked in Game Week 10, was pretty underwhelming in that game, not just in terms of goal output, but also his overall performance. His team didn't have a shot on target in that game, and there was a shock result, and that is Jarrod Bowen and West Ham that I'm on about. And I don't know why people are now starting to say he should be sold. It's one blank, and he's blanked 3 times this season, I believe. He's been fairly consistent overall, and he does have a high ceiling. And look at the upcoming fixtures for West Ham United, and surely Bowen is by far the best West Ham option period, even over Areola. And you've got James Ward-Prowse playing a deeper role. He was subbed out early against Everton. Kudus had some shining moments at the beginning of the game, and he looked quite lively. Lucas Paqueta as well. But Jarrod Bowen is ultimately the most dangerous West Ham player and the one who's going to get the most goal contributions. He's still worth that price. You can go to Matoma, who's even cheaper, and he's got great fixtures until Game Week 16. You could also go for Palmer, Adingra, and also all these other options like Gordon. But I'd still go for Jarrod Bowen and invest a significant amount of money into your midfield. So I don't really understand this sudden overreaction towards selling Jarrod Bowen. I just bought him in. I'm disappointed by his performance, but I'm still very bullish on him, and I think he's going to do extremely well over the next 5 to 10 game weeks potentially. The last midfielder is a bit of a short-term punt, and overall, around his price, there is one player that I do prefer over him, but for a short-term punt, I would consider Hwang Hee-chan. My main concern is that with Pedro Neto potentially out for several weeks or months, that could impact Wolves' goal-scoring chances because Neto is the creative hub behind that side, and Hwang Hee-chan's output could go down as a result. But it is Sheffield United away next. I think Hwang Hee-chan could do really well there. Then it's Tottenham, where you could bench Hwang Hee-chan. But honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if he scored in that game, and he's had a great start to this Premier League season. Long term, though, I would move Hwang Hee-chan to Gordon if you're looking for a midfielder around 5.7 million and below. But with this team that I'm going to build, including the 3 strikers, I will have nothing left in the bank, and my overall team value is 102.4 million. So long term, you can find ways to maybe build that and get Gordon in for Hwang Hee-chan, and that could include downgrading Gabriel to Harry Maguire. Honestly, it doesn't matter who you have here, and I know some people might gravitate towards 3 forwards. I don't mind that at all. If you are going for such a structure, I keep on saying it. For me, the 3 best forwards in the game are Haaland, Watkins, and Julian Alvarez. So if you want to go for 3 forwards, those are the 3 to get. Apart from Alvarez, if you want to diversify your attack a little bit, Darwin Núñez is my 4th favourite. Then it's Callum Wilson, so long as Isak is still injured. But because I'm going for this sort of structure, investing more money in the midfield, I am going for a budget striker here in Cameron Archer. He was benched against Arsenal and he did nothing really in that game. He hasn't done anything since his first start against Everton, where he produced 12 points. And you could just go for Mabama for an extra 0.2 million, or Moniz, who is 4.4. So you can find a bit more money there. You don't necessarily need to go for Cameron Archer, to be honest. But what it's all about is the 2 forwards. Despite blanking when a lot of people captain him in Game Week 10, I still would recommend Ollie Watkins up until Game Week 15. Even when the fixtures turn, Ollie Watkins is probably the only Aston Villa asset I'd want to keep, alongside maybe Diaby, because he offers really good value for money, and Aston Villa have one of the best attacks in the Premier League under Unai Emery. So Ollie Watkins, very disappointing, but that's his second blank of this season, and I still think he's going to do very well up until Game Week 15 at the very least. So Ollie Watkins over Alvarez for me for the next few game weeks. And apart from Erling Haaland, who of course is going to be in this team, I wouldn't really consider many other forwards over Ollie Watkins. Darwin Núñez looks great against Luton Town. He should start as well. Alvarez is generally a great player and he's just getting better and better. Callum Wilson could be a good short-term punt, but for me, Haaland is the best striker in the game. Then it's Watkins, and then it's Julian Alvarez. Let me know if you disagree down in the comment section below. Are you going to gravitate towards a forward 3 and maybe instead downgrade one of your midfielders to a Adingra, Cole Palmer, etc.? What are you going to do? And in terms of the key assets missing, I'm not going to deny it. Kieran Trippier and Heung-min Son are going to be very frustrating going without them. But then who would you downgrade, or what would you change in order to afford one or both of them? Would you downgrade Haaland when he faces Bournemouth at home next? There's some tough questions to be asked on the wild card. There is no right answer. And if you want to fit absolutely everybody in, you might have to compromise and have a weak 11th player like Cole Palmer with those fixtures coming up potentially. So there's a few things that you have to think about. But ultimately, I am very happy with this wildcard squad. It is a bit different with Raya and Gabriel. I know that's not going to be everyone's cup of tea, but I think in the long term, having at least one of them could be very beneficial. We're now over at FPL.team, which I use very often in my videos. I'm not sponsored. I just generally use it because it's a free resource. You can plan your teams for future game weeks, and I can't tell you how much it has helped me over the last few years in FPL in terms of my planning, when there's chips and all this stuff that I need to think about, future captaincy options, and also future moves that I want to make as well. So Areola would start in goal over David Raya, but it is worth mentioning that Arsenal kept a clean sheet in the last meeting against Newcastle and even at the Emirates. So that's back-to-back clean sheets against the Toons. I don't think that will be the case this time round. I think Newcastle will score, and as a result, I've benched Raya and Gabriel. So the back three would be Tsimikas, Mark Gay, and Matty Cash. A midfield five of Salah, Saka, Maddison, Bowen, and Hwang Hee-chan. And the front two is Haaland and Ollie Watkins. And by the way, speaking of differentials, Hwang Hee-chan is owned by around 2.2% of the game. So that could be a fantastic differential for you, especially in a game week like this against Sheffield United, who are bottom of the Premier League. And the rest of the bench, obviously I said Raya, Gabriel, and it's also Burn and Cameron Archer. And if you look at future game weeks as well, like game week 12, it also looks very solid. You can go for a back four there, potentially bench Hwang Hee-chan, start Raya, Tsimikas, Burn, Cash, Gabriel, go for a midfield four of Salah, Saka, Maddison, Bowen, and a front two of Haaland and Watkins. And that looks very solid as well. And apparently Saka is the best captain for Game Week 12 at this moment in time. Let's wait and see. I'd still be tempted by Salah or Erling Haaland. And the bench is also very solid. Hwang Hee-chan and Gay could easily start in this team as well. Even Areola at home to Nottingham Forest. But in terms of the captaincy for Game Week 11, I'll discuss this plenty over the next couple of days, especially in my team selection video. I've currently gone for Haaland in this setup. He is also the algorithm's favourite, while Salah is second. But honestly, that is a coin toss. It could go either way, and it just really depends on the circumstances within those matches. Haaland got an assist in the last home meeting with Bournemouth, despite Man City putting 4 past them, I believe. And also in the last meeting, Man City put 4 past them away from home, and Haaland scored 1 goal. So it's going to be an interesting one. I think Haaland will score 2 or 3. And I did say before Brian, I would back Haaland to score 4 over the next 3 game weeks, back when a lot of people were doubting Haaland for some odd reason. And I still think Haaland could do extremely well and score 3 goals alone in Game Week 11. I want to see your thoughts in terms of the best captaincy options in Game Week 11. I've got a poll out on my channel, so if you subscribe, you will see all the polls I put out, and they can be very helpful in terms of your final decision making, because you can see what our community thinks of it, and generally they do get things right. The captaincy this season has been a bit strange though, and typically the most popular captaincy option isn't necessarily the best one, and that's been the case for most game weeks so far this season. And Salah is the second most popular captaincy option. Maybe he's the one to go for. Heung-min Son against Chelsea is also a great shout. How would you fit him into this wildcard team? Some of you might say sell Saka for Son, but you've already got Maddison, and to be honest, I'd rather have Saka and Maddison compared to Matoma and Son, despite the fact that both of them are still very good FPL assets. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it or found it useful, then be sure to smash the like button and subscribe for new. Our aim is to get this video to over 200 likes and to keep on pushing towards new goals such as 22,000 subscribers. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and check all the links in the description below for the Patreon and channel memberships for early access to my videos, all my team reveals when I make the transfers, and much more, such as being featured on my YouTube channel page. And you can also check me out on Discord, and there's a big community there. We've got over 500 members. We're looking to grow that to 1,000 by the end of the Premier League season. There's also a UCL Fantasy channel there, and of course there's the FPL League. We've got thousands of members as well, and we do have the biggest UCL Fantasy League in the world too. So it's all thanks to the great community we have built here, and I just have to say thank you very much to the patrons and channel members. Your efforts are definitely very much appreciated. As always, I'll see you very soon for more FPL and UCL Fantasy content.